Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine War Update Extra video where I give you the extra nuggets and information regarding the context of the Ukraine war. Where should we start? Let's start with the UK intelligence update. Just a few interesting things to consider. Russian military proxy group Wagner continues to make a major role in attritional combat around the Donetsk Oblast town of Bakhmut. In recent months, it has developed offensive tactics to make use of the large number of poorly trained convicts it has recruited. Individual fighters are likely used a smartphone or tablet which shows the individual's designated axis of advance and assault objective superimposed on commercial satellite imagery. At platoon level and above, commanders likely remain in cover and give orders over radios informed by video feeds from small uncrewed aerial vehicles, drones. I don't know if you remember, some of you won't have seen it, but new people to my channel, but I actually discussed exactly this. War in Ukraine discussed this, and a few other sources, how the troops are micromanaged. So the idea is that the success of Wagner PMC is that they are not beholden to Soviet doctrine and they can kind of freely do what they want. And they don't have this hierarchical structure. Well, the reality is actually they are micromanaged to a really high degree level. And so, on the one hand, they can do what they want, but on the other hand, they can't do anything at all without being told to by their immediate commander. So, it's like the medium level and the higher levels in the Wagner PMC can do what they want, but then anyone down at the troop level is just like a pawn on a chessboard, or like a sprite, like a character in a computer war game that's just moved by the general. So individuals and sections are ordered to proceed on a pre-planned route, often with fire support, but less often alongside armored vehicles. Wagner operatives who deviate from their designated assault routes without authorization are likely being threatened with summary execution. These brutal tactics aim to conserve Wagner's rare assets of experienced commanders and armored vehicles at the expense of the more readily available convict recruits, which the organization assesses as expendable. That just doesn't surprise me at all. It's completely what I would expect, and in fact, what I appeared to what I've told you previously. So yeah, no surprise there. What else can I say? Well, let's go. Let's continue on Bakhmut. And here's a guy that I referenced, but I didn't play the video because I wanted it to not go on too long. But from the frontline update this morning concerning Bakhmut, and this is concerning the area of Opitny just south of Bakhmut, that I will show you on my map to remind those who don't know. So here's Opitny. There's fierce fighting, and there's claims that Ukraine have taken 500 meters off the Russians today. I moved my lines a little bit further south to include this church in the southern area of Opitny, but it could be some success for the Ukrainians. And here is one of the sources. Here is a guy driving around Bakhmut, and I will read what he says for those who are listening, because it is subtitled. So good day. Happy Saint Day, St. Nicholas Day. I'm currently in Bakhmut on the 19th of December, so that is today, literally today, driving through Bakhmut, he says. This is Bakhmut, it belongs to us. It belongs to us. It is seriously damaged. I haven't driven through it for a few days, and there were new strikes, new damage. But the most important is that it was ours and still is. And in a week, they haven't advanced 1 meter forward. I met with guys from another brigade, those on the front line. And they said their neighbors reconquered 500 meters near Opitny. Now, remember, he says, remember, this can just be propaganda. This is someone in the Ukrainian forces making these claims. Always bear that in mind. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I cannot say exactly where. They don't know themselves. But they say interesting things, that they captured Wagnerites. During the questioning, the Wagnerites said there is a lot of dissatisfaction, since what Wagner promised is not being done. They're not paid the salary they were promised, but instead paid 30,000 rubles, which is $400. Instead of the promised $2,000 to $3,000. and they all understand they are being sent for disposal. This is a very positive sign, since when people realize that their country's goal is to destroy them, and this is particularly, this is me speaking now, this is particularly about the expendability of those taken from the prisons in Russia. It's a way of like getting the prison population down. It doesn't matter if they die, no problem. Human wave after human wave. It's all about getting the meterage here at the expense of people that we don't really care about, rather than the actual Russian forces themselves. This is certainly in the context of this particular type of Wagnerite fighter. This is a very positive sign, as I say. Sorry, I'm just going to rewind there because I interrupted myself. Since when people realize that their country's goal is to destroy them and not pay anything, and that they are not getting out of freedom, from prison in this case, it's a very strong motivation to not fight. So we will fight and beat them. And time will tell how things are actually going and how they will develop. But be absolutely sure no one will give up Bakhmut. Bakhmut belongs to us, and we will win. So it's just an interesting video, and certainly would almost certainly be true about the Wagnerite claim there. Okay, let's go a little bit left field. I've talked to you about decoys, particularly down in the Kherson area, Russian Lancets hitting these decoys. Many may remember footage of the Russian Lancet drone striking a 5N63S engagement radar, the S300PS. So it turned out it hit a radar that was put there by the Russian forces. And I've reported on this several times previously. For the sake of transparency, we reconstructed the story behind these S300 batteries in Kherson Oblast, just to show you what happened. This is the battery being hit, and the idea was this didn't look like an operational battery. It was missing parts, so the claim was actually it was a decoy, but it was left there by the Russians in withdrawing from Kherson, and then hit by the Russians subsequently by their Lancet loitering munition. And the question was, well, what the hell's going on here? Are the Russians just don't even know that this used to be theirs and they've hit it? Was it a decoy that they just mistook for a Ukrainian piece? You know, what the heck is going on? People are trying to work out what it was. Well, actually, Ukraine Weapons Tracker have done a good job of trying to piece this together. In total, Ukrainian troops found at least 2 destroyed 5N63S radars and 6 launches of the S300PS system in Kherson Oblast. But were they really Russian? Not quite. We managed to identify which unit these batteries initially belonged to, the Ukrainian 50th Anti-Aircraft Missile Regiment stationed in Crimea prior to the Russian annexation in 2014. And checking archive photos of S300PS of this unit from the early 2010s, we can see exact camo match. We even found a photo of the very 5N63S radar. After the annexation of Crimea, these S300PS batteries were not returned to the Ukraine, unlike many other types of military equipment. At the same time, they never entered service with the Russian military, as they are missing the standard camouflage. Maybe they were deployed as a stopgap decision amidst the shortage of AD systems, or were used in air-to-ground mode. No, these images show vehicles in terrible condition, that with many critical parts missing, there is no need to bring an engagement radar to hit ground targets either. To sum up, the only viable explanation for the presence of these vehicles is that they were brought by the Russian forces to be used as decoys to make the AFU waste valuable precision ammunition. However, it worked on the Russians too. They struck their own decoys with Lancet drones twice. In other words, it appears that they genuinely thought these were Ukrainian pieces and took them out, but actually there were pieces that they left there that had been sort of cannibalized to be used as decoys themselves. So I think, from what I understand, it is the Russians hit their own decoys, fooling themselves, and these were originally pieces that were from Crimea that were used by the Ukrainians, but lost them when that area was annexed. Okay, I've been asked to talk about GMLRS. So these are multiple launch rocket systems, and HIMARS, and kind of talk about the two and what's the difference between the two. The MLRS family of munitions, MFOM, includes a variety of precision strike rockets and missiles, and with ongoing evolutionary development to meet the needs of the warfighter. These combat proven low-cost, low-risk rounds, greatly reduce collateral damage, and provide tremendous capability and flexibility in addressing today's threats. And that's because they have about 98% accuracy. So I'm gonna come off the Lockheed Martin zone site here and actually go to an interesting Go Gadget article talking about these systems. And just before I get onto them, the difference between these kind of MLRS M270 and the M142 HIMARS, let's just talk about the capabilities of the Russian piece of equipment compared to the NATO and Western ones. So the general, self-propelled guns have about 17-kilometer uh, range of certain types, and you get up to the MSTA-C have like 25-kilometer range, and then certain ones, and these are Scion ones maybe, having a 28-kilometer range. So you got different ranges of self-propelled guns and different ranges of howitzer, towed howitzer, 17 kilometers, but then the biggest one seems to be 28 kilometers for the Russians. But anything above 28 kilometers, you get onto missiles, right? Uh, and that's a bit of a step change. Whereas the NATO forces in the West have sort of 16-kilometer self-propelled guns like the Dana. Then you got the M114A1, 17 kilometers sort of howitzer. Then M777. These are these ones that were much vaunted when the US provided them, and the West have a 22.5-kilometer range. Now, some of these ranges can change depending on what munition is used, what ordnance is used inside these. You've got a Panzerhaubitze 2000, which is one of the best in the world. That's a German one, has a range of 36 kilometers. But actually, the Caesar, the French wheeled one, as opposed to the tracked Panzerhaubitze 2000, has a range of 40 kilometers. Oops. And that's much greater range capability. You're talking 8 to 12 kilometers above what the Russians have in their equivalents. And that makes a heck of a difference, right? That means you can sit there as a Caesar out of range of these, of the best Russian pieces of equipment, and still hit the Russian pieces of equipment. And then you're going up to sort of rockets, and the HIMARS that have a 45 to 300 kilometer range, depending on what rockets are used inside these. And the HIMARS and the MLRS have the same kind of range there because actually they use the same rockets. Well, what's the difference between these two? Well, essentially, in general, MLRS just means multiple launch rocket system, which is an analog of the term MLRS, multiple launch rocket system, that is widely used in the US. Accordingly, MLRS M270 and the M142 HIMARS are both MLRS. So they're both multiple launch rocket systems, which means they have pods that can send up multiple rockets at the same time, or one after the other. So HIMARS is an abbreviation of High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, a highly mobile artillery rocket fire system. And the name emphasizes two key differences between the M142 HIMARS and the M270, which is just your general MLRS. Higher mobility, so it's on wheels instead of tracks. So it means it can actually move quicker and get places and has more maneuverability. However, it does mean it's slightly less able to negotiate difficult terrain in the way that a tracked vehicle can, and that it has half the firepower, so it's not as heavy. So the HIMARS actually only has one standard package that accommodates six 277 millimeter caliber missiles, so it has one pod of six, whereas the MLRS of the M270 has two pods and can fire obviously twice as much. So there you go. It can also, so the HIMARS can, instead of firing the six, can do one tactical medium range ATACMS, 610 millimeter caliber missile. So it's a larger missile. So there you go. Really, there isn't much difference, and I actually use the term HIMARS to refer to both of them, but that's just laziness on my part, and I do apologize. But when you talk about multiple launch rocket systems and HIMARS, really they're doing the same thing. They're hitting these targets with the same range because they're using the same missiles. And yeah, so HIMARS has become this kind of term that actually covers both of them. With really, I should and people should use MLRS. But the thing is, MLRS also includes things like Grads and Smerch, and these ones that fire much shorter range missiles that are unguided and sort of ballistic. So, I suppose I should say M142 or M270 MLRS HIMARS systems and kind of say, but when just going forward, if I use HIMARS, I'm using it as a short term for both of those. Anyway, as we come on towards the end, because it's a short one today, just to show you that I think I reported this. I reported the other day that two Su jets from the Ukrainians were shot down and two Mi-8 helicopters as well, or two helicopters. The Russians claim that, but I didn't show you any evidence. Well, anyway, here's a Ukrainian helicopter going down, being hit. Interestingly, there are two helicopters. You can see it's in trouble there. There's another one that hangs out by it because what they want to do is make sure that when this one crashes, they can, if they can, they can extricate the crew from on board, because actually the crew are arguably more important than the helicopter. You can get replacement helicopters, but it takes an awful long time to replace the crew because they take many years to train and get flight experience. The good news for this is, at least as far as I can tell from there is no explosion of the helicopter, which means that there is a chance that the crew are okay. So the other helicopter hangs around, and I presume sort of lands and then tries to see what's happened there. But yeah, these things happen. And actually, my general impression is when the Russians report about helicopters getting shot down, it's almost like I think they're more accurate than when they report about certain areas of a town getting taken. They seem to exaggerate that stuff, but they seem to be somewhat more reliable, the Russians, when they talk about these kind of losses. But I may be wrong. And this is just fascinating as well. Last bit of talk on my short one today. This is Russian expert Mikhail Alexandrov proposed a new business strategy: attack Baku, bomb the Baku oil industry completely, and destroy the Azerbaijani energy system with missile strikes. And the West will suffer greatly from this. This will immediately greatly increase oil, or the price of oil. It's weird that they're trying to make other enemies. Now, I know they're involved. They've traditionally supported Armenia against Azerbaijan, but this is in the immediate sort of area. The geopolitics of this is kind of odd for them to be really driving a wedge between the two and almost saying to Azerbaijan, it's a threat to Azerbaijan, but it's also signal to Azerbaijan that actually probably Azerbaijan should side with the West. So it's a bizarre thing to say, and I'll read it out because so that's what he's saying there. That's his voice, but I will say that we'll have to do something. Generally speaking, Russia has certain means, even without starting a war, a contact war. I mean, a land war with Azerbaijan. Doesn't hold back. Attack Baku, bomb the Baku oil industry completely, destroy the Azerbaijani energy system with missile strikes. And by the way, the West will suffer greatly from this. If we now bomb their oil industry, then oil will not flow to the West, and this will immediately greatly increase oil prices in the conditions when they introduce an oil price cap. And I feel that Azerbaijan is already hiding behind a declaration on strategic alliance that it signed with us. They appeal to this, and they provoke our peacekeepers at the same time. We must make it clear that we may not be at war with them in Karabakh, but we will bomb the entire energy system, the oil system, and Azerbaijan will be left without oil, without electricity. Will they be able to fight with Armenia for a long time in such conditions? I'm not sure. Baku provocateurs have calculated everything very well. Peacekeepers cannot use weapons in such a situation, their own Russian peacekeepers. They can use weapons only in the event of a direct armed attack on them. So just bizarre, just trying to position themselves firmly on the side of Armenia, whereas Armenia have been cuddling up to the West with Nancy Pelosi going over there and visiting. So really interesting geopolitical situation in this area, and Russia potentially doing their best to, I don't know, annoy everyone. Who knows? Anyway, something to consider going forward. Thank you. That's the end of my rather shorter one today. Please like, subscribe, share. You can join now my channel ATP Geopolitics as opposed to my other channel. I'm moving all this kind of Ukraine war stuff over to here. So the other channel will be predominantly philosophy and other elements that kind of cross over, like I did my Elon Musk video over there, because it fits much better in with that kind of stuff than this kind of geopolitical stuff. But generally, I'm going to be reporting on whatever I like and putting out videos on anything I like. So if you like the topic of the video, watch it. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I mean, you don't have to say you shouldn't post this stuff, because I can post what I like, but you can pick and choose what you want to listen to. So that's your choice there. But thanks so much for your support. You're all brilliant. Some amazing comments on all my videos, so I really appreciate that. Anyway, in the meantime, take care. All the best. Speak to you tomorrow.